September 2015, and this evening Pam's Gaunt is going to talk about Nancy Bayley and her reminiscences of Maylands. And that's as much as I know about it at the moment, and I'm sure I'll know a lot more after Pam's finished talking. So welcome to Pam.
I'm mostly reading from notes, of course. It's a great pleasure for me to read from notes given to Terry by Nancy Pierce near Bayley. Nancy and I were classmates at high school and have remained friends ever since, both sharing our 80th birthday this year. Unfortunately, Nancy is not well these days and agreed for me to read her notes tonight. Although she mentioned being born and living in Inglewood in her formative years, the two suburbs, Maylands and Inglewood, were more integrated than they are today. At that time there were no fences along the railway line, and although the 7th Avenue Bridge and the Caledonian Avenue crossing existed, people walked freely across the railway line. People from both suburbs used Shern Park as a central meeting place for sporting events and school sport days. Shern Park, known to us growing up as the Rec, was the only sports ground within the two suburbs at that time, and was named after Harry Shern, real estate agent in Maylands, and Perth Roads Board chairman, who retired from the council after 15 months due to internal mismanagement and factional opposition. Some things don't change. With no fences, it was easy for Maylands people to also cross the line to attend pictures at the Civic Theatre and use the joint library on Bow Street. There was no library in Maylands. In her notes, Nancy mentions men who worked for her father, who were known as remittance men. This term was used for immigrants to a British colony or someone living away from their home in their early years. Her father's carrying business at 137 Central Avenue was one of many in that street. List Brothers at number 91 were another who had trucks and did roadworks. Snooks and Sons at number 101 on the corner of Carrington Street were builders and had also run the pictures at the Town Hall and built the Lyric Theatre. The Catholic convent school was on the south corner of the same intersection, and the telephone exchange, which is still operating, on the north corner. This story begins with her earliest recollections at the age of 2 years, and she's entitled Living Histories 1935 onward. 1937, I was 2 years old and had been born at 26 Wellington Street, that's now Stewart Street, Inglewood, near the Civic Theatre. My earliest memory is of Guy Fawkes' big night being held in the block next door to us, and I was hiding under the kitchen table because I was terrified. Holidays lived directly opposite, and he and Dad went into some sort of business together. Keith used to play with me, and we were in the same class together at Inglewood State School. There were a couple of suicides in the street at this time for men that couldn't get work during the Depression and its aftermath. These men used to walk into Perth each day to try and find work. Mr. Polblades was one who committed suicide. My mother said later that these were terrible times. Though as children we were protected, my parents often go without dinner at night so that we could have something to eat. Mum and Dad had walked off the farm at Wongan Hills in the Depression in early 1933. They had passed the bank manager at Northam and hadn't stopped. Dad told us that he had told the bank manager if he'd not gone up to Wongan Hills by a certain time that he would be leaving, and he did as he said he would. They drove down to Perth in an old Republic truck, and this is the truck that started Dad in his carrying business. He carted stone for the buildings in Wellington Street, Perth, for Bowen's store. Bill and George Edgar worked for him. They had also been on the farm. I understand that they were remittance men. Dad built a house at 137 Central Avenue, Inglewood, and we moved in there when I was 4 years old. We had trucks, 3 Internationals, a petrol Bowser, and a large shed on the back of the property, with access by a laneway. Dad had a huge canvas cover built to go over the top of one of the trucks, and we used to go down to the southwest and up to the Murchison River on camping holidays. Meekins the milkman lived behind us and had horses and stables. We, my brother Howard and sister Maureen, spent many happy days looking at the horses and building cubbies in the block next to the stables, which were opposite the Inglewood Hotel. During the war, Dad worked at Midland Junction on munitions. Mr and Mrs Dean had the corner store on Central Avenue and Beaufort Street. I remember buying ice blocks for a penny each. Mr and Mrs Allen had the grocery store Mr and Mrs Allen had the grocery store a little further up. I can remember my father standing in front of the fire in Central Avenue and telling me war had been declared. He frequently stood with his back to the fireplace and had burnt several pairs of pants. Fred Book, East Perth Football Club, lived opposite and down a couple of doors next to Slavin's, and Robert's family next door, the one to them. What's that?
It's all right, don't worry about it.
Our milk used to be delivered by milkmen, and we would put out our billies every night. Bread was also delivered in loaves with no wrapping. Both tradesmen had horses and a car. One of my dad's family friends from Bayswater had bees and used to deliver honey to us. Now I think that was West Covey Honey and Beachborough Road. But still exists, isn't it? We always had a car, and because we had a petrol Bowser for our trucks, we usually had petrol. We also had a gas producer on the back of our 1936 Ford. It was a real treat to go to Saturday Arvo pictures at the Civic Theatre. We used to work there most times. We went to Sunday school at the Baptist Church in 7th Avenue, Maylands, and had a fire and brimstone minister called George Hall. He was American. We used to ride on our bikes for hours out into the bush near the golf club and pick wildflowers. There was also the rifle range up near North Street, which later became a football open. There used to be a lodge on the corner of 9th Avenue where we used to go for Christmas parties. We often also used to play on the Rec, which was Shern Park, up near the Catholic school. I still have scars from playing with Howard, brother, on trolleys he used to make. We would take them up to the top of the hill to Carrington Street and go as fast as we could down the hill. I always had to sit in front and have several scars to show for it. Bull & Brothers used to hold annual circuses across from Dean's corner shop, and Dad used to let them bring the animals down the side lane and use our hoses to wash and water them. We used to get free tickets to the circus. 1940, I started school at Inglewood State, now Mount Lawley. Teachers were 2 Miss Artley's, Bob, and 1 standard Mrs Hanson, Miss Wall, Miss Waywood, and Sir Mr Rankin. During the war, and most times, we had up to 45 kids in the class. I remember vividly running home from school when the air raid sirens went off and hiding under the kitchen table, carrying at all times a little haversack with barley sugar, chewing gum and other things in it in case of being bombed. We used to swim at Crawley Bar and walk back to Perth to catch the tram to Inglewood so that we could save our penny and buy a lolly. Dad used to take my brother and I to Wongan Hills, and we used to stay with the Fuchs family, mainly sometimes the Bayley cousins. Dad used to let us help drive the truck. We all got our car and motorbike licences at 16 years of age. During this time I used to go to Sunday school, Perth Baptist, Central Baptist Church in Museum Street. We used to walk home from church to Inglewood to save a penny so that we could buy lollies to eat as we walked. Late in 1947, I left Inglewood State School and also Central Avenue and stayed in rented accommodation at Elsie Street in Waterman's Bay. until our new home was built at 8 Woodland Street, Mount Lawley. Dad used to take us to school in our car early in the morning, and we often caught the bus out to North Beach after school. They were carefree, happy days down the beach and going for rides into the bush. My sister Helen got lost when she was about 3 years old, and they found her on the beach on the way up to the point. There were no roads past Waterman's Bay. Lois Sheriff found her by following footsteps in the sand up the beach. In 1947, I left to go to Perth Girls High School and stayed for 18 months before going to Girdleston in grade 8. We moved into our new home. Miss Wright was our headmistress of Perth Girls, and I was a transport prefect. Later I learned that teachers used to pick the kids that were most likely to play up in order to keep the others in check. Girdleston's was quite different to Perth Girls, and there was obvious competition between the teachers. I used to go ice skating. John Timms and Mum always knew that I'd been because all the pleats were out the back of my skirt because I couldn't skate, were wet, because I couldn't skate properly and always used to sit down on the ice and get wet. Girdleston was also where my mother went to school when she lived in Aberdeen Street. Miss Halliday didn't like me. I was captain of the tennis team and that year we were premiers. We used to go to dancing lessons with the boys next door at Perth Boys and had dances in the evening several times a year. My cousin Peg used to give me all her cast-offs. She was a model and had a lot of clothes. We had domestic science classes next to Perth Boys School in Rose Street next to the Government Room Hotel. I finished school in 1949 and started work at the Midland Workshops in 1950 as a shorthand typist. Mr. Leach, who used to live on the corner of Alexander Drive and Woodland Street, was the CEO and asked me if I'd like a job. That doesn't usually happen. I worked there for 3 months, walking to Mount Lawley Station, travelling up to Midland by train, and doing the reverse coming back. In the meantime, I'd sat for the Commonwealth exam, as my parents thought it was too far to travel to Midland in the winter time. Scarborough Beach bus into suburban used to travel to Scarborough Beach via Walcott Street, Alexander Drive, and proceed down Scarborough Beach Road to the beach. Mr. Lundy had the newspaper shop near the corner before Alexander Drive was widened. His shop was diagonally opposite Dr. Cowden's house in the corner. The number 19 trams were still running from the terminus at the corner near the shops into Perth. Tram was the way that I used to move around, except when I used to go out with my boyfriend who had a bike. He used to live in Wembley and rode over to pick me up, and we sometimes used to barbecue or picnic at Ferry Lakes. After 3 months working at Midland, I started working at the GPA in Perth on the 4th floor. Finally, I used to sort money orders all day, but after a few weeks, was transferred to 2nd floor telephone account section. After a few months, I was promoted to a grade 2 job, which was very good money. I used to do detailed statements of trunk line calls and phonograms for all the phone numbers in Perth. We called our boss Gutsake. Sexual harassment was alive and well in those days. You soon learnt to avoid the sleazies and put them in their place. However, if you weren't careful when you were standing at the filing cabinets, you would get someone brushing your backside as you went past. My father had his own business in Perth called Western Arts. They used to make models for displaying clothes in a Hearns, Bon Marché, Boy and Gibson. The factory was at 251, 257 Hay Street. There were 4 buildings, semi-detached. 3 were boarding houses and the factory was in the other. The factory had previously been across the road, but Rod Evans bought it out and turned it into a self-serve grocery store. A lot of Saturday nights we would have Mum's friends over. They all played the piano and we'd sing around the piano and have supper. Sometimes we'd walk to the Astor Theatre and in the summer and sit outside to watch the movies in deck chairs. At 16, I used to go dancing at West End Dance Studios, which was down the road a bit and opposite His Majesty's in Hay Street towards Wynyard Street. We learnt to jive, foxtrot and quickstep. Soon we were branching out going to the embassy and opposite, and just around the corner was the drill hall. The drill hall played modern music. The embassy used to have different nights, modern, old time and 50-50 dances. I played hockey for YMCA and grads and trained on the esplanade below the Capitol Theatre. Right Nest was always a draw card, and a group of us would go over together or know someone who had a tent. One time a girl and I slept in the beer tent with the beer. It was all pretty harmless stuff. We also had a song to go to the tune of Galway Bay. We had words that referred to the Board of Control at Rottnest, who were very disapproving of some of our hijinks. I still have lunch with my friends, usually about 4 times a year. We also hired cottage number 10 on Thompson Bay and stayed at the quad in the cells several times. During Easter, the guys used to line the bottles up across the road to see how much they drank. Prawning at Matilda Bay and then cooking the prawns afterwards, I always felt it's a much overrated pastime. I didn't consider dragging a prawning net around to be much fun. We used to also prawn in the Canning River, to the left of the Canning Bridge going to Fremantle. I got my motorbike licence when I was 16. My brother had an Egg-Beater 125cc BSA when he was 17, and he taught me to ride near the pine plantation at the end of Alexander Drive in Mount Lawley. I still have my licence. He used to be in the Army Reserve, and while he was away, he used to pick up my friend on the Tiger 100 or the Gold Flash BSA and go for rides. Occasionally my brother's fiancée and I would go together, she on his bike, me and my boyfriend 350cc Royal Enfield. We would also go to the TT at Yanchep. I don't know what the TT is. I played tennis at Alexander Park Tennis Club. We also played social tennis. At 18 I went to Singapore on the meat shuka, commonly known as the meat sucker. I remember the 1950s when Perth Traffic Authority was in James Street opposite Perth Boys School, the driver's licence, etc. Trams went along Beaufort Street, Hay Street, Canning Highway, Stirling Highway, Guildford Road and Victoria Park. Trolley buses went to Wembley. Meet You at the Savoy was an advert, and we used to meet at the hotel in Perth in Hay Street near the Piccadilly Arcade. The drinking age was 21. You had to leave work when you got married. Perth Girls High School was on the top of the hill at East Perth RTA is now. All the buildings in St George's Terrace were made from beautiful stone. The AMP building on the corner of William and St George's Terrace with its statue on top. Leandri's restaurant in William Street next to the Grosvenor Room Hotel over the Horseshoe Bridge. About 1952 was my first Italian meal, spaghetti bolognese in James Street. There were hardly any nightclubs in Perth except the European Club and the Latin Quarter near the corner of James and Lake Street. Outdoor pictures in the summer sitting in deck chairs, seeing Louis Armstrong in Brisbane in 1956, 78, 45 and 33 records, ducks on the lounge wall. That's it. But there's a lot of things mentioned that, you know, we've all forgotten. That's it.
Thank you.
That's an extremely valuable document. She's really gone...
She's put all the detail in there, so
Great.
it can be filled in, but, yeah.
And
Well, I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes. Excellent.
the special thing for me, I'm thinking, if we just had that document somewhere, how many people would actually read
Well,
it?
there it is.
Exactly. But if, but having Pam actually read it out,
Yeah.
we've been able to absorb that. I'm sure if we had it somewhere, we probably wouldn't get around to reading it. But to have somebody talk about it, that's fantastically
Well, there are
valuable.
so many things that are different now, like the manager of the Midland asking her if she'd like to have a job. And that's how I got my first job. I'd applied in one place and they said, no, we found a girl, but the fellow next door, which was on the corner of 10th Avenue, was timber and hardware. And he said, but next door they're looking for a girl. So he walked with me down to next door to say that, you know, this girl could be your clerk. Like,
And that makes me think how different, as you say, how different
Very
it would be.
different.
You wouldn't have it like that. It's more of a a family thing and I can help you out and I know
Yeah.
somebody else and that kind of thing happens really well. That's really good. Yes, you
I'd
could.
just like to mention the fact you mentioned going down towards Margaret River Way. I recall going down there, it was only a little nipper myself, and the road was all chalky road. There was no,
It was a long way.
it was a long way and it rained too. And of course we went camping, we had two uncles and my father and mum with me. And of course we had to wreck the tent and all that while it was still drizzling, so it wasn't very popular. But you're looking at some of the little side roads, you'll see the little roads still there. It's just all through the bush and just a narrow track and it's all limestone. So
Sure.
it's pretty rough.
She also talks about learning to ride a motorbike in the pine plantation at the back of Mount Lawley. And everyone in Maylands went round and round to the aerodrome because there wasn't a soul down there.
You needed to go on holidays using a truck. Yeah.
You said you didn't know what the TT was. They're motorbike races.
Tourist
The
trade.
Isle of Man.
Oh.
The Isle of Man has the TT races, don't they?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
We just had them.
The Isle of Man.
Yeah, a fortnight ago.
Good.
I know what my daughter and son-in-law went.
Yeah.
So families going on holidays in the back of a ute or the back of a truck with just a tarpaulin over it and all that sort of
That's
thing.
all
Just
it was.
normal. Yeah.
With
My
the,
father-in-law used to take kids out to City Beach on that board that used to be there in the back of the trailer. The trailer full of kids.
I was just going to say the road out to City Beach was made of sleepers,
Wood
and it was a
sleepers.
switchback.
Sleepers,
The
yeah.
switchback,
And we
Yeah.
had an
Yeah.
uncle who
Kids
had
in
a
a
lovely
trailer.
big car, and
Called the
he'd
Plank
run us
Road.
out there and go up and down and, you know, stop at the top and we'd be screaming as we loved.
Great riding on that with a motorbike. Or
with the motorbikes though, I went across to that licence place, just opposite the First Boys to get my licence. I bought a motorbike from Mortlocks in Hay Street, and it was a 250 C11 Visa, overhead valve, world's worst bike. I didn't know. Anyway, I got the thing, and I think I got it on a Friday or something, so I took it home and rode it around and got used to it. And then on the Monday, I parked out the front of that police station there and went in and said, "Police circuit, I have my licence." And the sergeant came out and he said, "Okay, now look, get on the bike, start it, drive up there, up James Street, until you get to the level with the entrance to Perth Boys, turn round in the road without putting your foot down. Then proceed down across William Street, observing the rules, go along another 50 metres, turn round without putting your foot down, and then come back observing the rules and come back here." And I thought, I didn't practice that. So I got on the bike and of course, very anxious, got to the thing and I put my foot down. I had to get over it and made a sharp turn, put the foot down, that's blown it. So drove down and straight across William Street. I was a bit anxious. Put my foot down, turned round again, came back and I thought, that's blown it. And he wasn't there. So I waited a minute, I went inside and he sort of, "Here you are, son." And never even looked. Now that was slightly different to what it is now. Then later, going down south, as I say, this bike was a bit not all that wonderful. Oh, my friend had a worse bike. This was slightly bigger, but worse. So I was very condescending, saying to him, "Okay, look, we'll drive down to Bunbury together for this May holiday, or what it was." So we proceed down, but the problem was carrying the gear, because all I had was an army tent. Now in those days there was a lot of war service disposal. So an army tent held 12 people, you know, it was a wagon great big thing. So we didn't have the poles, but I had the tent. Now, it's not funny. Anyway, so I tied it on the bike, you see, and with all our gear.
Parachute.
And the only way I could drive it was standing up. I drove like that. Anyway, things were going quite well, and until we passed Mandurah, and then it was and I was very careful about this bloke on this rotten little bike behind me, and my thing just went, and I bent the push rod. Now, the rotten pushrod, now there's no repairs in those days. No, you did it yourself. So alongside the road, I had to pull the tank off, the head off, rip the pushrod out, put it on a couple of rocks, get another rock and belt it back, and put it all back together. And all the time, this friend of mine's going, bloody bike. So I eventually got it going. But it didn't close the valve properly, so it sounded like a series of rifle shots. So I drove all the way back, through Mandurah, all the way back to Perth on this thing. Now, that was adventuring.
Yes.
You don't do that type of thing anymore.
Just going to Geraldton, I had a big adventure. Nothing like that. I had a nail in a tyre, slow leak, and that's as bad as it was the rest of the time. So imagine the difference between, that being the worst thing
Well, you just have to look
to
at
actually pull an engine apart and bang it together and put it back together again. Amazing.
Yeah, you did.
No, you
The
can't.
other
You,
instances like that, because I'm sure that the life this is what brings it alive to us, is the fact that we can remember some of that as well. So when they talk about even 1956 or 54 and those kind of years, I thought, well, I can remember those years as well. And there is a commonality, and that's why it means all to it, because when she's writing about her history, she's actually writing about ours as well, because we all live that same thing, and that's why this is so valuable to all of us as well.
Could I ask, not a reminiscence, but a question? Someone, you or someone may be able to tell me, what was the producer that was on the back of the vehicle that you mentioned? How would that work?
Charcoal.
They burn charcoal.
That's a bit too
With
technical.
gas in it. It was messy and noisy and...
The roasted charcoal gave off methane gas and they burned that. Jeanette's father down at Albany, down at Wagen, had his own garage, went broke during the Depression, and he passed the garage over to a chap by the name of Cliff Pedrick, who invented Pedrick, who did all the work on
He
the
invented tractors and
tractors,
graders
did
and
all
all
that.
sorts
Yeah.
of
So
things.
he was the great man down
Plumber, but he just had that
There's-
nice still there.
There's several makers of those gas producers, and I remember quite well, we had a big pit dug and used to burn the mallee roots and all that and cover it over, and about 3 weeks after, you're digging it out and trying to sieve the rubbish out this and bag all that up. Oh, terrible job it was.
Yeah.
So
But
basically,
it's good material.
trying to produce some methane to put into an internal combustion engine to get going.
It was the only way you could do it.
You're making your own
Well,
petrol.
Forerunner of LPG.
Yes.
Jack would use about a gallon of petrol to go to Perth and back, and about 3 bags of charcoal.
Unless you were like the bloke who lived in 1.5 streets away from me. I was in Morrison Street, and just down the way, won't mention exactly where it was. And he was in the army, and he just wandered along because kids walk the streets all the time. And I saw him about 3 times parking his army truck, and he had a tube, and he was doing something like. I couldn't work out what he was doing.
He wasn't cycling, was he?
Yes, he never got enough petrol.
Kerosene.
Well, thank you very much for your talk. Really good. I really appreciate that. I have got a presentation for you. And my presentation. Well, that's going to leave it open now because I've got now a draw. You've all got lottery tickets.
Yes.
Raffle tickets, not lottery tickets. Yes, it is. You want to buy some? Okay, we can do that. Oh, Deb, we've got some last minute. I won't.
Last minute sales.
for $2.
They get put on the top, won't they?
So this is a bit free guy.
If they win, it's rigged. If they win, it's rigged.
It's a bit of a ladder. Did you get your contract there?
Yeah, we had to.
I can imagine.
You have the general, yes, the pictures.
Well, they come back.
You have the download the pictures of the ministry. Yeah, we did unload them. I don't know if you've got it, but I'm sure he does. Normally, yes, we have downloaded it, downloaded it, and we've got a hard copy because we've got a couple of spots.
Thank you for those last purchases. I'm going to get Pam to draw a number.
Could have killed you. No difference, crushing the weight.
Okay, so if I get my own.
That'll be wonderful.
No, it's not.
No, it's not your own. It's a purple ticket, and I think they all are. Purple stroke B, but it's number 10.
Oh, haven't heard of one.
I'm going to get close rule.
Oh, no one's sitting next, so maybe. Oh, no.
It's yours.
Yes.
No.
Roger's
No, I've never won anything.
He always wins.
I've never won anything.
No, I think it's got, should be a lead because I won raffle at the affiliated societies draw. There's 130 people. And
Show 'em, Roger. Show 'em.
I'll get Pam to draw now. Thanks.
Try to do better.
You do better.
It's 34. I said 33.
That'll be good if it is.
No, I don't want
No,
it either.
no. Number 34.
Yeah.
Purple B, 34.
Draw it again.
That was before me.
No, it's a purple one, 25.
I got 35.
Number 25. That man at the back there.
Yeah, I've got 25.
You've got 25.
Someone said I had 34.
Yes, they did. But we drew it again because they chucked it.
Oh.
Said she didn't want
So,
it.
Oh, I better not have it either.
so
Oh, you've got 35.
Marie-Louise, it's a red, white, or a box of chocolates.
Oh, take the red.
Okay. I
The
will show you
whites
this.
and the chocolates are getting very old.
So the wine. That's all right.
The main prize of the brass,
Oh, that's
great write-up about the light horse and the First World War, so there was a lot of reminiscence in regard to that. So that was the door prize, so everybody there got one ticket,
And Roger's donated that to the Historical Society.
it's got some sands of Gallipoli in there as well. I think with the full write-up about it. Pride of place in our boardroom.
Yeah, it should be too. Very good model.
Roger, could I just say something about a book? I've just finished reading The Dangerous Games about the 1936 Olympics.
Oh yeah, I heard that on Radio National a
And
couple of
there's
weeks
such a
ago.
lot about Evelyn de Lacy in it.
Yeah.
And I thought you might be, interested. It was a really good read, and so much about Evelyn de Lacy and talking about where she came from, Maylands and stuff. I just thought you
I have a book about, I don't know whether it's a daughter or a niece that also went to the Olympics. And in it, it's got Evelyn de Lacy's diary, when she was going. It was absolutely brilliant.
Yes, she was a very bright person.
I think it's called Born to Swim.
What year was this? That she went to the Olympics?
28 or something.
The
1936.
1936 in Berlin when Kid Lloyd made it.
Yeah, the medical one. It's not the Mrs. de Lacy that's still alive, is it?
No.
That would be good.
I don't think she lived in Western Australia, did she? Evelyn de Lacy didn't live in Western Australia after she came back.
No, she married and lived over. It was rather sad laugh up.
Yes.
So who's the Mrs. de Lacy that used to teach swimming, that lives down the
She
bottom?
was
all the
Australia's
Lacys
first
swam.
woman
Oh, they
They were all good.
Olympics, and she learned to swim down in the Bath Street. Gently, didn't she?
But her diary's wonderful. Really is
Didn't they have a swimming pool in the
Really
backyard?
good diary.
Yeah, next door.
Yeah, they had
Yeah.
a swimming pool next door.
Yes, but she did,
It's still
she
there.
did, there was a swimming club down at the Bath Street
Everything.
jetty,
It's
which is where she
When my children were children, there was
You mean Calla?
Yes.
Calla.
They didn't,
Calla.
Yeah, that's what it was called, Calla. Caledonian Avenue.
Caledonian Avenue. When I saw it, the ladies' toilet, the ladies' change room was like a sieve. The boys had got to it. It was quite good.
Really, we're a very naughty boy.
Enough that kind of talk. We can adjourn now for a cup of tea. We've just got 2 kettles here. We're trying to get them warm, so we should be able to get tea and coffees going. And the table in the kitchen there's got some goodies in it, so if you file in there and then maybe come back here, sit in the chair, we'll rearrange the chairs.